Syllable Desktop started from the old Atheos operating system 8 years ago. And all that time I developed the infrastructure in a direction that eventually we would also be able to build a Linux variety of the system. I designed the build system, and the build system is very crucial for how an operating system is built, and most build systems are for that operating system alone, but I always designed it in such a way that it would at least be possible to build a Linux with it. And that's very doable because Syllable Desktop, as we call it now, it started out as just Syllable. It uses a tremendous amount of standard open source software, especially from the GNU project. Video drivers, most of them from the Xorg project, X3 at the time. There are a few drivers from other sources, even a video driver from B, from the old BOS. And the low-level drivers, most of them are ported from the Linux kernel. And I once did an analysis on the source code, and I found that at that time only about 4% of the total source code that went into a system build, only about 4% could be called ours. And that wasn't really ours because most of that 4% was ported drivers. So of that 4%, the bulk of it would have been the original drivers from the Linux kernel and the X3 video drivers. So I didn't analyze it further, but at that time probably less than 1% of the source code was really ours. And that was astonishing even to me. It was about 3-4 years into the project for me. And I sort of knew that, but I didn't know the extent of it, because Syllable Desktop, as it's called now, is entirely its own operating system stack from the ground up. And we have someone in the room who knows very well what that means, but Norman is doing operating systems and has done that for a very long time. Not many people are aware of it. An operating system is a stack of software. Its goal is to take the hardware, the bits that are offered to you by the chips in the computer that are aggregated into bytes these days, and that's it. The hardware can do a lot for you, but only hardware doesn't do anything. So we always need the system software, and it's very complex, and the complexity is only growing. So it's a layer of things. It's a stack that starts at the very low level bits of the hardware, and it works up to the point that you can have windows on your screen, and maybe even 3D and games, and you can move your mouse and things will happen. And an incredible amount of things need to happen to get that end user functionality.
Sorry, can you say anything about why you want to build your own operating system?
Well, the standard geek answer is because you can and because it's fun. But there's also a deeper answer because at the time, 8 years ago, when Atheos had already been going for about half a decade, we're not even entirely sure. So this system has been maturing for about a decade and a half already. It's still far from being finished. That's the complexity of operating systems these days. At the time, 8 years ago, I don't know if you can warp your mind back that far, but Ubuntu started 4, maybe 5 years ago now. And Ubuntu started at a time when the Linux for the desktop was a total mess. It was unusable. Only the very hardcore geeks could use Linux on their desktop machines. And it was okay for servers, and it had been good for servers for years. But and so we're getting at the whole philosophy. It's a very good question, because Syllable Desktop is really focused on the desktop. And 8 years ago, that was a very obvious and very worthy goal. And about 4 years ago Ubuntu came, and you see several innovative projects, you see them drying up, especially over the past 2 years. And it's also happening to us. So it seems that there's not that much interest anymore. And my thought is that's mainly due to Ubuntu. As finally, in the past 4 years, after Linux had already existed also for a decade and a half, at that time already, they made the Linux desktop usable. And then you get to the next question, why are we continuing with it? Because 8 years ago it was a great goal, and it was obvious to someone who had a little knowledge, a little insight into it. And then 4 years ago you had to go head-to-head to Ubuntu, and Ubuntu was still a mess, and so it was still obvious. But the past 2 years that Ubuntu is making itself usable, it's not so clear anymore. So that's really from about the past 2 years that it's not a clear answer anymore. And what I can show here is how it compares, because people have always been saying, yeah, you claim to be more efficient and nicer, but that's because